What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. This is TWA Motorsports, and today we're going to continue the progress on the 55 Chevrolet. So in the last video, guys, we struggled, but we got the frame out from under it, and you can see it sitting here beside it. But before we take this thing off and have the points, well, the crack welded that I found while I was working on it, and I'm probably going to have some bracing put in and probably welded brackets as far as like the LS mount and the actual Ridetech stuff. So the Ridetech stuff is actually, you can't bolt it in because you can't get on the inside of the frame. So it's literally just screwed into the side of the frame, but I would feel a lot better about it if it were mounted. So in today's video, we're gonna see how far we get, but ultimately I would like to get some of the brackets kind of in place. And then I want to get a lot of these brackets cut off. So I want to cut off the original transmission brackets, which will have to be cut. I want to cut off the stock leaf spring hangers. They're not going to be used anymore, front and back. I want to get all the body mount bolts or the body mount rubber pieces out. I want to get the rear end out from under it, obviously the leaf springs. And then we'll just kind of see where we're at once we get all of that stuff done. That's going to take some time in itself. And then there is another thing. I need to roll this thing over, which will be easier once we get some of the parts off of it as far as being a little easier to manage. I want to go ahead and cut out the areas where the bag has to clear on the front of this. I also may knock the rivet out because there is a rivet that has to come out in order to mount the front sway bar. So we're just going to kind of work our way through things. I think I'm going to start, I won't show you guys this, but I'm going to go through and just pick these off. They may be kind of a pain to get out. I may get a screwdriver and kind of pry them out, but these are the original body mounts. They're actually in good shape, but I'm going to buy a set of replacements since we've got it out. But let me pop those out, and then I think we'll start back here. I'm going to try to jack the frame up a little bit, maybe get it on some jack stands, and then we'll work on getting the leaf springs and the rear end out. Now that we got all the body bushings out, we're going to start back here with a, of course it's a different size. I think a lot of this was put together with parts that were probably taken apart some time ago, but got those off. Now we need to do the front ones, which I think will require a wrench here. The spring pocket is kind of oddball. I don't know, we'll just have to see here. Of course it's a different size. Oh, it has a pocket. Okay. It goes all the way through. There's actually an opening on the inside, so we'll grab a wrench and see what the inside size is. So just like everything else, it's standard, and that's 3/4. I don't know if that, oh, it's a nut on the inside. All right. I have to fish that out of there because I don't see where it went. Holy cow. The other thing I may have to do is I may have to drive that out. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen the other side, but it looks to me like we're gonna have to drive that out in order to get this thing out of here. Got it started. Man, this is the oddball deal because there's a channel. The bolt and the nut is on the inside there. We're going to see if we can maybe get some pressure off the rear end here, or lift the rear end maybe a little bit and get this loose. They're being a little stubborn, so I think we'll have to drive them out. Buddy, that's insanely tight. It's interesting because it's starting to come out, but it doesn't look like it's meant to come apart that way. I may loosen this bottom one as well, even though I can't get the impact on it. I may just try to loosen it by hand. These shackles were meant to come apart a little differently than what I'm used to. You can see you have to have the bottom off. That's why it wasn't coming loose. That was the problem. So once I get that, I'm gonna kind of just put it back together, and I'd like to like keep this together as one piece as I pull it out. Now we got both the backs out, it's loose. Let's see what we can do here in the front. I don't know if we'll be able to tap it out quite the same. Sometimes you can thread these out. That sure is what I'd like to do if that's possible. That other side started to thread out as we were coming through, but this one is not wanting to do the same. So let's see if we can tap it through. At least get it started. Once we get it started, maybe the threads will catch and we can thread it through. I don't know. Nope. We're gonna have to tap it a little further. So, using a screwdriver, I was able to tap it all the way through. I guess I'm gonna have to do the same on both sides, but then we'll have, yeah, we're out of the pocket at least at that point. Got both sides loose now. So, aside from, I need to get the clips out here that hold the e-brake cable. Just two little clips, similar to, they're actually brake line clips. So once we get those out, we should just be able to roll this thing out from under it. There we go. As far as grinding stuff off, my wife got me this for Christmas also, which is gonna definitely come in handy. Guys, I thought about buying one of these, but until I went to my buddy's house and we were using one, it was like, man, it's so much better than having a cord. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start here in the back. We're gonna work our way forward, cutting stuff off. I'm probably not gonna show you guys a lot of the cutting process just because it wrecks my camera. I'm gonna cut an X in these rivets on the top, and I'm gonna cut an X in the rivets on the side. So there's a total of 4 rivets that hold this thing to the frame. We're gonna get those cut, and then I'm gonna see if I can get my air hammer and the chisel, and we're gonna knock the heads off, and then we'll try to push them through. I wish that they were bolted on, but obviously they're not. So we're gonna work there, and I'll show you guys kind of in this whole process, but then we'll kind of work our way towards the front, cutting in and out as we go. Take a look at what I did here. So you can see how I cut an X in all of them. And so now I'm gonna grab my air hammer, and we're gonna see if we can knock the heads off those. And then I've got a center punch for my air hammer. We're gonna see if we can drive them through, and then this bracket should be completely off. This is what I used, just this tip. You can see I've got the heads completely knocked off on all 4 of them. So now I'm gonna switch over to this one, and we're gonna just hammer on the end of it here and knock it the rest of the way through. Once I knocked them all through, it just fell right off. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we were wanting. Obviously, guys, the reason we're taking these off is we're not gonna be using the leaf springs. No sense in having it on here. And just makes the frame look a little nicer. So I'm gonna grab my magnet and run it in here and see if we can grab those rivets. I don't wanna just leave them bouncing around in the frame. But yeah, not bad. Maybe took me, I don't know, 5 minutes if I didn't have to change the battery. I will tell you guys that thing goes through batteries. And when I'm using the air hammer, I'm kind of holding the frame because it wants to walk around on the jack stands. Now I have the second one off. So moving forward, we need to, I'm gonna start here in the center, and we need to take, because of the suspension that we're gonna be putting on, we have to remove these brackets. This is your e-brake cable bracket. And guys, they're just tack welded. Here's what I think I can do here. Instead of trying to cut these, the Ridetech manual says you can knock them off with the hammer. I'm just gonna put my chisel on the air hammer and chisel kind of on the inside here on both of these, and I think I can just knock this off, and then we'll probably clean it up with the flap wheel later on. So that is my plan. We got to remove both of these on each side. Now, if you didn't have an air hammer, you probably could just get a hammer. They look pretty flimsy. I don't think there's a lot to them. It's just a tack weld there and there, so shouldn't be too big a deal. Look at all the dirt that came out of the frame when I was doing that, but I got those off. So you can see we got both. We're gonna have to clean that up with the grinder. There's a little bit of spot weld left. That's where the new piece will mount. It mounts almost right up against this body mount for the new suspension. So, okay, moving onward. We need to cut, and we don't need to, but I'm gonna cut this guy off. Now this is gonna probably require quite a bit of grinding because I'm not gonna be able to cut, I don't want to cut into the frame. So probably what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut along the line, you know, straight up and down here, probably right here. And then I'm going to see if I can bend it over. I may cut right here too, see if I can knock it down with my sledgehammer there and then cut the bottom side. But we're going to have to go back and clean all this extra off. I just don't think I can get super precise trying to cut, you know, like sliver it down this way just because the angle of the grinder. I'd be cutting into the frame, and I don't want to do that. So let's see if we can cut this off next. We got one of these on both sides. This is the front leaf spring hanger. And guys, I'm sitting here doing all this thinking what a pain this would be under the car. I mean, it could be done, but definitely, and this isn't required to remove this stuff to do the suspension stuff I'm doing, but I just figured, you know, why not make it look a little cleaner while we've got it out. We now have this front bracket off. This is kind of how it was sitting on here. So I started by cutting this section, and then I cut straight up and down here, bent it down a little bit, and then I started cutting from the bottom, and then I was able to just knock it off with my sledgehammer. So we've got a lot of grinding to do here. Now, chances are I may be able to sharpen my air hammer bit and maybe knock this off, but I don't want to risk getting into the frame. So I'm just going to grind this with the flap wheel. I think that's what I'm going to do next. I was going to leave, since I already have the cutting disc on there, I was going to leave it on there and just go the other side, but I think it's worn down to almost nothing. So I think we'll go ahead and swap out, see if we can grind this down and make it look nice. Now, also going to have some grinding to do on the bottom, but guys, I'm going to have to flip this thing over to do some stuff in the front. So I'm going to wait to grind on areas like that until we've got the thing flipped over. There's just no sense in me laying on the ground and trying to grind there. Now you can see with the flap wheel, got that all cleaned up, nice and smooth. Look, there's imperfections in the frame. I didn't want to go as deep as that's going to take to get that little piece out, but I also did, where's that? Oh, I did this section here, cleaned it up where we took that bracket off for the e-brake. So now we're just going to continue to the other side. Obviously I need to do it, and then I've switched over to my plug-in one, so I'm not having to swap back and forth. I'm leaving the flap wheel on it for cleanup, and honestly guys, it burns through the batteries with the battery powered one. It's great for like small cleanups, but as much as I had to remove here, it just wears on the battery. So I've got batteries charging, and so now I can cut with the electric one, or the well, they're both electric, but I can cut with the battery powered one and then switch over and grind with this one. Now got both sides cleaned up, inside and out. And then I moved on up here to the original transmission mounts. And so here's how I did them. I probably, like I said earlier, could have used my chisel. I don't want to go into the frame. So what I did was I cut along the top and I cut along the side here, and we'll go over here and look at this one. And then I bent it over with the sledgehammer and was able to, it just broke off, honestly. So you could see my cut on the top, cut on the back side, and then I have that same cut on the front. And so what happens, you can see it's starting to peel back. Be careful that you don't knock it off the jack stands. And then ultimately, guys, I'm just gonna try to Now, I'm gonna try to bend it back and forth here until it just breaks off. So we'll just keep working back. There we go. So now, obviously, that's gonna be a lot of grinding. I'm probably gonna get the cutoff wheel in there and cut some. Got both the rails knocked down, all grinded down and looking good. So now I'm gonna move to these two brackets. I'm just gonna drill the center of those out, knock those off. And then we'll be at the point where I need to flip it over because we need to cut out for the bags on the bottom side here where the spring pockets are. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those knocked out and then we'll keep moving. Got this thing flipped back over. Actually, my uncle showed up to help me out, and we ground, I didn't show you guys this, but we ground the upper structure here. You can see that needed to be flat, that flange, and then you had to cut off that lip. We did that off camera. I completely forgot to turn the camera on and show you guys on both sides. Got it flipped back over, got those mounts off. He's sharpening a drill bit right now because I didn't even look in the instructions, and this actual brake bracket has to come off as well. So, and then one other thing is if you're using the same kit that I'm using, like the Ridetech stuff, this right here, this weld that keeps this body mount in place, this piece right here, which I'd like to put in before I take the frame off because I wanted to weld around it, but it has to go up against this body mount. So this little ridge here. So he just ground that weld off, and we're gonna try to hammer this piece in. It is a snug fit, but I'd rather, it's self-tapping screws, and I'd rather have it welded than self-tappers ran through it. Got this piece like tapped in with the rubber mallet. The only issue I have here is it won't go up any further because of the kind of welding slag on the two piece of the frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind down a little bit of that. The other thing I'm going to do is, because I want to weld this, I need to grind around the edges. So I'm going to mark around kind of where it is loosely right now. And then once I do that, I'm going to take this back out. I'm going to grind that little lip off, and I am going to go ahead and run the self-tappers in there to keep it stationary, but I want to use some clamps to get it where I want it. Like I said, it has to butt up directly to this, and it's not wanting to do that because it can't set where it needs to set down at the bottom. So once we get a couple of those things ground off, I think we'll be okay to maybe grind this piece down and get it like loosely fit in, clamp it where it needs to be, and then drill some holes and get those self-tappers in. I think they are self-tappers. I may not even have to drill any holes, but we'll just check that out when we get there. But first I need to grind this stuff off. Let's talk about the problems that I'm running into. So there's a couple of them. First one being when this guy is up against the body mounts like it's supposed to be. So you can see it's up against the ledge of the body mount there. Look at the gap right there. And I told you guys I was going to adjust by grinding the frame off, but I did, and it doesn't go any further up. So I don't like that. The next thing I don't like is it says to measure 20¼ inches from this opening right here on the frame, the back side of it, to where this bag mount goes, which you would think would be somewhere in here based on the shape, like right there, based on the shape of things. The top, the bottom, the way it fits. No, 20¼ inches puts it right here, and it doesn't fit at all. It's just, look at that. I don't know. So here's where I'm at. I'm finished working on it here in the garage. I didn't get the self-tapping screws either, by the way. They did not come in the box. And look, guys, I'm not dogging on Ridetech. These frames were made back in the 50s where I bet you every single one of them was just a little bit different. So, you know, trying to make a kit that works on all 55, 56, 57s, it's tough. And so, like I said, I'm not dogging on Ridetech. It just sucks that if this were under the car and you were trying to do this, I think it'd be an extremely hard project. I really, really do. So here's where I'm at. I'm gonna take this to my buddy's shop, 417 Motorsports. I've made a video there before, guys. he builds this stuff from scratch. So this is like cakewalk for him. So what I'm gonna have him do is, I did clear off the edges, as you can see. I'm gonna have him weld that into place, because I don't love the self-tapping screw idea. I get why you have to do it, because you can't get inside the frame, but and then he's going to take, I'm gonna take the rear end, I'm gonna take the bars, he's gonna get that all set up as far as pinion angle, ride height, and then I'm gonna wait and have him weld on the shockwave brackets as well, because once he gets the rear end set where it needs to be, side to side, and then front to back, and then the ride height, he'll probably be able to put the bag on it and kind of see where that bracket needs to go. It sucks, because I wanted to get a majority of it set up and then just take it up to him to weld, as well as the crack that we found in the frame. But the other thing, guys, is I've got a transmission mount that goes here in the middle, which I'm gonna have him set up as well. I'm gonna have him weld the motor mounts on, because they go up here in the front, and there was a little bit of a gap there. And besides that, he may put some reinforcement here in the center. I don't know. We're gaining something there, because that, that wasn't there before. The only thing that ties this frame together right now is that front cross member and that little chintzy back one. So that was it. Aside from when the transmission was in, you had those mounts here. And if the transmission was in, it was kind of tied together more in the front. But from here back, there was literally nothing other than the body keeping this thing moving from side to side. And the fact that I can knock this thing out of place and I have to hammer it back in, but then it's really loose again once it's in, tells me that there's a lot of walking of this frame back and forth. So he's got the ability to do this. So I think the next thing you will see, guys, I may give you guys updates as we go through this process, as far as taking you by his shop and showing you what's got accomplished. I'm not pressing him as far as time goes. When he gets to it, he gets to it. He's busy. He has a ton of other stuff going on, but hopefully he can get it out in a reasonable time. And so once we get that, and like I said, I'm going to try to cut in and show you guys, progress. If I don't, the next thing you will see will be it back here in the shop. Now, I know I told you guys I was going to show you a little bit of the progress, but he did it like super quick, like within a couple days. So it's been about a week since I last filmed on this. And so I'm going to show you guys what we got accomplished, or what he got accomplished, kind of talk about what it is. And then I have some assembly stuff that we're going to talk about. So it is back, as you can see, and here's what he did. So guys, like I said, this stuff fit not good. It wasn't good. You guys saw that gap on the bottom. So what he did was he welded this entire bracket in place. So that is now welded all the way around, and he lopped off the two bottom pieces that were supposed to be screwed in from the bottom. So way more sturdy than what it was going to be. Obviously he did that on both sides. Then coming back to these guys, remember how I had a fitment issue here? He just cut the ears off, got the rear end into place, and welded those where they needed to go based off, the measurements out of the kit. But at the same time, putting the rear end in, he also welded the brackets on the rear end. As you can see, it had some leaf spring pieces here. And guys, the reason I had them tack those on when I ordered this rear end is because I thought I was going to be doing this in my garage, and I want to try to get the pinion angle right with the stock leaf springs in place, but obviously we went another way. So we cut those off, welded this in place, and then I was going to do some bracing on the inside, but honestly guys, we're not going to be throwing this thing into a ton of curves. The bracing that we have here is going to be way better than what it was, because originally the only bracing was the front right there and the very back, and that's really thin back there in the back. So he added the transmission mount that I got with the motor mounts, so he welded that in as well, and he set a 4L80 on it and an LS engine on it and welded around these guys. And then I'm sure that you guys have noticed, but there used to be openings here. He welded those closed just to make it look a little bit nicer, both front and rear. And the other thing he did is obviously he fixed the crack on the bottom side on this side. So, and then he made sure there wasn't any others. But guys, I am just tickled pink about this. I'm just literally ecstatic. So here's what I'm planning on doing. Just to make sure everything mocks up and sets right, we really need to get, I want to get the rear end and the bars kind of up in place. I want to set the transmission and the motor back on to make sure everything's good there. And then we'll just see where we go from there. But that's kind of my next steps. I'm just gonna kind of set you guys up. I may time lapse this part, and I'm gonna have to put some, I'm out of jack stands. So I've got 2 in the back, 2 in the front. I think I'm gonna move these to bricks. And the reason why is I'm going to, I'm gonna need those jack stands for the rear end. So if that makes sense. All right, so let's get it going. You can see I've got it setting on a couple cinder blocks in the front. And like I said, guys, this is just temporary because I'm out of jack stands. So got the rear end setting on jack stands. So I think we'll start back here with the 4-bar setup. I didn't get any bolts off my kit, as I was saying. Luckily, the guy, Blake at 417, when they did the work on this, they got some bolts to, you know, they had to have them basically to set this up. So we're just gonna deal with what we've got. And he did order, I mean, he got some bolts for me for the arms, but I still don't have them for the bags. Running into a little bit of an issue here with the fact that I don't know if you guys can see how close that is. No way you're gonna get, I tried to put, as you saw, I tried to put it in the other way, it didn't work. No way to get a nut on that. So, I mean, it's together. I just wanted to thread it and make sure everything's good. Rear end looks like it's where it needs to be. And so I think I've got some bolts for the bag mounts. I'm gonna see if we can get those like loosely fitted. Well, we're running into all kinds of problems. When I didn't get the rear hardware kit, which I need to call them, I've sent them an email, but they haven't responded, but they sent the wrong sleeves that go on the top and the bottom of the bag. Other than that, I don't have a nut for that stud that comes out of the rear end, that billet bracket that we put on. And then I don't have any of the bolts. Obviously, 417 didn't have to use I mean, they just put a bolt through and a piece of metal, so they didn't have to use a bolt per se or the sleeves because they're not mounting the bag. So, and ultimately, guys, we're gonna blow this back apart, but it'd be nice to make sure that everything works. So I'm gonna have to, before we go any further here, you can kind of get an idea how it works. We can, you know, come back and do this later on. But I just want to make sure everything fits, you know, before we take it to powder coat or paint or whatever we do. As you can see, you got everything bolted together. You do have to put the transmission, I would say this is the mount. It's a urethane mount. I don't know whether we'll use this or not, but we'll see. If I get any vibration, this thing will be coming out, but it's an energy suspension. You're gonna have to use your stock 15s, and I do not, because the instructions on this do not tell you, but I'm thinking it may not matter which side's the front. It doesn't have a front or back on it, but we're gonna put that thing up in there, and then we should be able to set this thing hopefully into place. Got the motor and transmission setting in there. The only issues I see, the transmission mount lines up awesome. The driver's side seems to line up good. It seemed like we could get one or the other, and that's generally always the case. I think we're gonna have to take the trans mount down in order to kind of tweak it over and get this bolt the rest of the way in here. But we got all the slack for the most part off the chain, so we're getting there. It's just, it takes some time sometimes. I'm gonna say at this point, we're finished for this video, guys. I'm gonna have to get the bolts for the back, for the airbag mounts, the little sleeves that go in to kind of center it. They're almost like a washer, but they're like a proprietary sleeve for the roto joint. So I need those in order to mount the bags. I really need the fuel line to figure out if I'm gonna have to notch anything in order to run the fuel line. What I'm thinking, guys, is the brake line's gonna be fine on this side. It's gonna run, even though I wanna mock all that stuff up before we obviously blow this apart and go to paint. But on the fuel line, I think it's gonna have to, or I'd like for it to run down the driver's side, since the tank sets a little closer to the driver's side. I would like for it to run down that side, but I may have to notch it because I'm gonna have to run two lines, a feed and a return. At least that's the plan. Up here to like some sort of adjustable fuel pressure regulator is the plan. So we got everything for the most part kind of mocked up as far as the back suspension and the motor and transmission mount. And ultimately we ended up taking, my son actually came up with this idea, can you believe this? But he said, let's loosen these, which I've had to do before. I don't know why I didn't think of that, but he thought about it. We loosened these up and we were able to get that bolt all the way through. And yeah, it's setting where it's actually supposed to. So in the next video on this thing, guys, what we may do is we may start running some brake lines so you guys can see that process. I may see if I can snag a different oil pan, because the oil pan is actually touching on the front side. I would like to know, you know, are we gonna have to notch anything there? If we are, we need to know that obviously before paint. I really like to have the headers just so we know, you know, what the clearance looks like. But brake lines for sure in the next video. I think we'll put the steering components back in, the stock ones that I have sitting over there, at least so we can get some mock-up. And then aside from that, we may have to notch some things, but and maybe we'll have bolts by then so we can kind of mock up more. And I'd really like to put, I mean, I want to get it down to where it has wheels and tires on it even. So that's the goal, is to get it down on wheels and tires, brake lines, everything where it's supposed to be. And knowing that we've got everything cut, notched, you know, sanded, ground down that we needed before we take it to paint, obviously make it look nice. But anyway, this is a process, guys. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, and like the black truck, the Sierra, the green truck we've done a few things on. This is a time-consuming project, and so it's not something that we can just put together in one video. Unfortunately, you run into, oh, I don't have this part, I don't have that part, and so it just kind of snowballs and it drags out. So I don't know how soon you're going to see the next video, but another one is coming on this thing. So if you guys have enjoyed this, if you're liking the way this thing is going to look, or at least you think it's going to look, go down there and hit that thumbs up button. If you are not subscribed, guys, you got to go down there, get subscribed. Of course, while you're down there doing all that, ring that bell icon. That notifies you every time we drop a new video. And stay tuned to see what we work on next.